So, Bryce, it's been a very interesting few weeks here in the United States since I spoke to you.
Well, you've been on the Ross Coulthart America tour, summer 22, and I can say you've been to some very interesting places. I've been actually working on a screenplay I've been hired to write about how the world will change after we all understand that we're not alone. I have to tell you, it sure seems like reality is catching up with my fiction at this point.
You're not wrong. I mean, I had the most incredible conversation with Professor Gary Nolan yesterday at Stanford University, and he told me how he is absolutely certain that there is an alien presence on planet Earth. I mean, you can't be more definitive than that. And he also said to me categorically that he thinks that the United States government is involved in a cover-up, which is breathtaking.
As you've said from the beginning, you've always known about the cover-up. I think I've felt the same way. The question has been exactly what are they covering up? But I think that the world is starting to see that, because while you were in DC interviewing Tim Burchett, which I think was a fascinating interview, and I'm really glad that you got it, the Senate side of Congress has really made a lot of waves while you've been running around. I mean, it's unbelievable.
This law, I mean, to be able to speak to the Congress people and senators, it was just breathtaking to hear what they're doing. The proposed legislation is mind-blowing in its implications. It's going right back to 1947.
Well, exactly. I mean, this is the Senate Intel Committee, which has basically criticized the Pentagon and says that for what they've done or not done about investigating the phenomena, and has literally said that UFOs are exponentially increasing, while making clear that its new office is not going to be investigating, quote, man-made objects, which leaves the big question, what exactly will it be investigating? And that is pretty fascinating. The other thing that language, see, this is the language that came literally from Senator Mark Warner, who is the head of the committee, trying to explain everything. And it just lays out so many incredible things. Among them, there is language about immunity for witnesses. It does ask them to go back to 1947, which you and I have talked about at length on this podcast. It says there's a new guy in charge of the committee. It says the committee has a new name. It's the man-made thing we were talking about. And then there's a few little nuggets in there, Ross, that just kind of blow the mind, where they say they want the investigation to focus on, quote, technology surprise and, quote, unknown unknowns.
Absolutely. It can't be more clear. And what I understand is that this has come about because of the classified briefings that have already been given to politicians in the Congress and their staffers. There's something that they've seen. There's evidence that they've been shown that they're still not allowed to talk about, which has completely transformed the attitude of politicians. I was really struck by, not only just by talking to Tim Burchett, but really struck by talking to people in and around the Congress. There's been a real change of mood. There's an impatience and indeed an anger with the Pentagon and defense and intelligence community, because they've basically been dragging the chain. They've been too slow to respond to the laws that were passed by the Congress in the defense appropriations late last year. And frankly, they just haven't done their job. They haven't responded to what the Congress asked. And so now they're being hit with this proposed new legislation, which is like a sledgehammer. It's quite breathtaking to see what they're proposing.
You started by talking about the sense of a cover-up. Well, for years and years, Congress was part of that cover-up, refusing to have hearings and poo-pooing anybody who ever stated they had an open mind on the issue. And that all seems to have changed, or at least it has changed among the people in Congress who have had those briefings. And I agree with you. From taking a look at the language in this explanatory report, you see people that are pretty irritated. And they want some more answers. And why would they want them? Well, not based on the public hearings that you and I have seen, but clearly these people have gotten the classified hearings, and they have seen and heard and been told things that have made them impatient to the maximum, and more than a little pissed off that they're not getting from the Department of Defense what they need in order to basically keep things safe. This is all about safety of flight and things like that. They're worried about national security.
And there's also a spit in the eye there for the notion that was pushed by the two intelligence officials on May 17 in the public hearings in Congress to the idea that this could plausibly be explained completely as drones. I noticed that the terminology in the proposed new legislation, it refers to non-man-made objects as being the focus of the investigation, which is a specific rebuttal to the idea that this might be able to be explained away as drones.
Well,
that to me is quite extraordinary.
It is extraordinary. And let's face it, if you start breaking out non-man-made objects in language that is coming from a US Senate Intelligence Committee, that raises questions. I just don't think there's any way that there's a way to look at this and say, we ought not to be taking this so seriously. Folks, don't worry about it. Nothing to see here. Clearly, there is something to see here. I wanted to, though, because I know you've been traveling and I've been, while I've been chained to my desk and following all this, I know that you've been talking to some very interesting people. I wanted to ask you most about Burchett. Burchett seems to me to be the most outspoken person in Congress, and yet he is not necessarily the most influential. He's on the House side of things. The action seems to be going on in the Senate. Is that your read as well?
4 words, Bryce. It's a cover-up.
Nicely done. Nicely said. It is a cover-up, but it doesn't seem like Burchett has the he doesn't have the positioning right now to make the changes that some of the people in the Senate are saying.
He doesn't, but he's a vote. And the interesting thing is he's very close to senior Republicans. And what I thought was the case was that this was just coming from the Democrat side. But it's really interesting. There is a rump of Republicans, Marco Rubio is one of them, who are very determined to get answers on this. And frankly, the reason why they're determined is because they can see votes in it. They know the American public feel that they've been snowed. They've had the wool pulled over their eyes. And I think they've realized, too, that there's been deliberate misinformation to the Congress. When you're presented, as they have been, with these classified videos that show things that are far beyond known human technology, and frankly, it can't be explained by a foreign adversary technology or some secret corporate technology here in America, what's the alternative? And the interesting thing is the alternative is alien. The alternative is that this is a non-human intelligence. And that's where Professor Gary Nolan really rocked my boat. He basically said, yes, he thinks there is a non-human intelligence operating on this planet, and he thinks it's only a matter of time before the US government admits that.
So it's not like we've been looking out there for the answer to are we alone, but the answer may really be down here where we are. You used 4 words just a couple of minutes ago. I got 2 words for you, but it may only be 1 word. And that's how I look at Washington, D.C. on the UAP UFO issue, and that is bipartisan. So I don't know, 1 word, 2, not sure, but bipartisan seems to be what's going on this issue. And isn't it fascinating at a time when the United States of America could not be more evenly divided? I mean, if you took the country and just cut it in half, you'd had half red, half blue. But on this issue, this incredible issue of whether we are alone in the universe and whether there is an alien intelligence here on Earth interfering with us right now, there is bipartisan agreement coming out of the Senate and the House that it is time to get these answers before the American people. It's a very, very exciting, but also important time to be alive.
Now let's talk about Jim Marlin, because I haven't got much time. I've got to go to something else. But Jim's the guy from Texas who has a ball in his possession, a steel sphere of some kind. And he thinks, I'm not saying it is, but he thinks it's alien technology.
I saw that, Ross, and I have to tell you, I mean, you and I both start from a skeptical point of view about specifics. On the big picture, I think we agree there is a cover-up and somebody's covering up something. On the specific picture, when you go to Marlin's case, it's sort of like you got to say, show me. Just show me the money on this one. And I think that's exactly what you're doing. I think that's what Gary Nolan is all about as well. And I think we are going to realize something that is, I think we have to deal with. And that is, there was a quote from a physicist at the turn of the last century. And he said, the universe is not only stranger than we imagine, it is stranger than we can imagine. So if there are little alien balls running around Texas and in people's homes being picked up by the government and deactivated or whatever is going on, yeah, it's strange, but it's not stranger than I can imagine. I can imagine even stranger. And I bet that's what the answers are.
Well, the good news, mate, is that Professor Nolan, an eminent immunologist and an eminent scientist in his own right, he's actually a Nobel nominee, by the way, he is prepared to investigate. And he's told us that he'll get his staff to do mass spectrometer testing on the scrapings that we've taken off the side of the sphere. And hopefully, eventually, we'll be able to get a scan done of the object to see inside it. And as Jim said to me, he said he'd be happier than everyone else to know just definitively whether it is or it isn't.
I think he's probably been waiting many years for that. Look, I know we're running out of time, so I just want to drive us to the end of this thing. You and I started on a journey. We got in my car, we drove up the coast, we talked to people, we've broken some stories. You've gone off on your own. I've done some investigation on my own. It's been a process that we have both been involved in, and it's been a fascinating one. My question is there any takeaway for the both of us to what we've been through over the last month?
There is for me. I detect a significant change of mood from the leaders. On the side of the people pushing for transparency, they're more optimistic than I've seen before that they're going to get results. That there really is, as you say, a bipartisan willingness in the Congress to get to the truth. And I see a confidence from my off-the-record sources and my on-record sources that there are going to be whistleblowers coming before the Congress very soon, certainly in private hearings, giving evidence of what I'm told are, quote, legacy UFO programs, end quote.
It's amazing. Listen, here's my takeaway. While you've been doing the last leg of this journey and doing such a fine job with it, as I said, I've been locked in a struggle with the script about how the world will change after we acknowledge that we're not alone. And I have to tell you, for years, people have assumed that the world will just completely freak out and fall apart when that day comes. And so I've had to try to get my own head wrapped around what you and I have been talking about. When it's a widely accepted thing, how are people going to take it? I used to be a little more pessimistic. I used to believe, well, it's going to come out of left field and people are going to completely freak out. Now I feel a little less like that. I think that if I don't know whether it was by design or not, but the idea that we're not alone and that some intelligence is here now has been coming out by dribs and drabs, and the spigot has been opened up a little bit of recent time. And I think people are kind of ready for it. Now, I'm not going to say that people aren't going to run to the nearest Costco and hoard toilet paper when some announcement is made. They probably will. But will we get through it? Will we be stronger as a species? I think yes. And I also think my final takeaway from this is if the things that you and I have been talking about are true and are revealed to the world public, I think we are in a time where they will accept it. And it may be the only thing out there that can bring these divisive parties together, not only in the United States, but in your country and other countries around the world. This may be the ultimate Hail Mary for humanity, and I certainly hope it is.
I hope you're right too, mate. Listen, I've got a rush. Great to talk to you. I'll brief you more when I'm back in Australia.
Looking forward to it. Talk to you later.
We need to know, Bryce.
We do need to know. All right.
Mate, that was fucking terrific. That was great.
All right. Okay, good. All right, so we got something.